Hi, my name is Francois Nodia, and this is Super Teachers Unite, the show dedicated to finding out what it takes to teach like a superhero. Now, all of us had that favorite teacher when we were at school, and they were very influential early in our lives, and we remember them fondly. Now, in every episode, I'll interview business leaders and other super teachers so that they can share the stories about the super teachers in their lives that were so influential on the successes that they made of their lives. Now, they'll share stories from the classroom, but as well as the boardroom. In every episode, our guest stories will assist us in finding out, especially if you're a super teacher, what it is going to take to improve your practice. And if you're a business leader, how will you improve your people, your processes, and your profits? Now, if you need me to assist you in finding out how you can teach like a superhero, check out our website at staysuper.co.za. Finding a job as a teacher is becoming increasingly difficult, and the competition is fierce. Now, I want great teachers to find great jobs. That's why in the previous season of Super Teachers Unite, I've asked all of my guests what it is that they look for when they hire people. Because I think it's so important that we get to know what are the traits, what are the qualifications of a teacher that really makes them stand out from the rest of the crowd. And what's interesting with all of these interviews that I did with our guests is that the answer isn't really like industry-specific skills. There are many softer skills or interpersonal skills that employers are looking for. So in today's episode, we have clipped all of these sections that I deem is worthwhile for people to know from our previous episodes so that you can get to know in one episode what it is that employers are looking for. If you're looking for a job or just thinking about maybe moving into another position, this episode will definitely be for you. Enjoy.
The reason we're laughing is that this is if you went and looked on our website at our recruitment, you'd be going, we've never seen this before.
Yeah.
And we call it the Shackleton process. And it's based on, what is his first name? Ernest Shackleton. And he was recruiting men for going to the South Pole. And it's probably a very abbreviated version of what I'm talking about. But his ad was men wanted, dangerous journey, pay low, success doubtful, reward if come back is going to be a lot of esteem type of thing. And he kind of put it out there as this is what it's really about. And our Shackleton process is exactly that. Teachers wanted, toughest job in the universe, pays low, rewards immense, and you're probably going to cry quite a lot along the way. And the thing about Ernest Shackleton is that he ended up on his ice-breaking machine, a ship getting caught in the ice flow. His ship got crushed. Everyone got marooned on an ice island, and it took them 6 months to trek to a place where people could, get them back again and into civilization. And he didn't lose a single crew member because he had the right team members on board with him. And again, that's a very abbreviated version of what happened. But when looking at recruiting teachers, we've done it over many years, and the very strong team we have at the moment is a result of realistically understanding that being a teacher is probably the toughest job in the world.
So that's how we put it across in the application process. We have a space for a very short CV, but it's more about answering questions about themselves, and for us really putting across that the job is not for sissies. Gersh and I don't believe in hiring someone with a fabulous CV with a great brain in their head, and then as soon as they walk through the door, expecting them to stop thinking. They're going to be hired because they have a brain in their head, and then we're going to say, right, go. And so there's a lot of deep end, but we do offer the water wings, and we walk the journey with them. There's a lot of training and a lot of support, but it has resulted in an exceptionally strong team. And I think their response to COVID, is a recent example of just how strong they actually are.
I think the deputy head in the last 2 days was having a chat to him, and he said, talking about the new teachers and how they're fitting in, and he said, EduInc's got a very open plan when it comes to teachers.
Yeah.
And, Jax talks about deep end. You've got a brain, use it. If you need help, ask for it, and we'll provide the support. But if we walk in and we let you put your toe in the, in the pool first and then slowly get in, we're not doing you any favors. We're not getting you to self-author, as it were, in that space and create what you want to be. I don't want a robotic teacher. I want somebody who's authentically themselves, brings their own uniqueness to the classroom, and is absolutely passionate about what they do, excited, because curiosity and passion for students comes from a passionate teacher and an
Yeah.
excited teacher. If you don't like what you're doing, find something else to do. And part of that for our teachers is not just about what they bring in the classroom. We have a whole lot of clubs that the teachers create based on their interests. And it varies from term to term, as you know, the kids and the teachers have an intersection of interests, and we ask the teachers to share that, because when they're sharing their passion, be it on the subject or whatever they're interested in, that curiosity, you never know if it's that club for one term on photography that the one teacher's passionate about that inspires something in a child. And we're asking them to bring their whole selves to the job, be entirely authentic about what they're doing, and be comfortable being uncomfortable, you know?
Well, I think it's also just we look for people who bring more to the party than just somebody who's going to stand in the front of a room and work through a textbook page by page. We are an independent school writing the IB matric, and that gives us a certain amount of leeway to play with the curriculum a little bit. We're very fortunate with that. We don't have to be as prescribed to that CAPS curriculum as the average government school. So we need teachers who are qualified. They have to have their absolute minimum PGCE, etc. We don't take teachers who don't have qualifications, obviously, but are still curious and excited about their subject. Because if I'm working with a grade 4, for example, and I'm doing social sciences, geography, whatever it is, what's more important? To spend time page by page going through a textbook, a prescribed work, or to spend a month out of a term building a weather station that we code, and we put the whole thing together, we set it up, we code it, it's computerized. What's a more valuable exercise, and what is going to produce a better outcome? It's going to be the weather station. So we look for people who come up with these creative ideas and are not afraid to actually go for it with their kids and take those kids with them on this journey.
We prefer teachers who have got a PGCE and they've got an undergrad in the subject that they like to teach, because the volume, the base knowledge is a lot bigger than teachers who have done a teaching qualification or teaching diploma type of thing.
Mhm.
And it means that you've got a teacher who's teaching maths who's got an honours degree or master's degree or something like that with a PGCE. If I see a teacher teaching out of a textbook, then they shouldn't be in that classroom. You should be able to go in there and talk about your subject from top to tail without having to look at the textbook, because you know the content, and it allows a lot more freedom in the classroom when interesting things come up to be able to talk about it in the context of the students' lives and bring the world into the classroom. If you're teaching out of the textbook only, it becomes very restrictive, and you can't really deviate from that when the lesson asks for it or something interesting comes up. So
Yeah.
textbook teaching is a no-no for us. You can refer to it, and I know it's a safety blanket for some of the kids and some of the parents, but the teacher should be able to walk in the class, have an idea of what that lesson's going to be about. They've got the content, they know how they're going to test the knowledge, and jump in like that.
It's such a loaded one. It really depends on the job. The easy one to answer, I think, is more of that they're proficient in that skill. Like the way that my company works, we're doing full service podcast production most of the time, and the way that we've structured our team is that everybody's a specialist in their own right, and so we have like formal producers, editors, copywriters, audio editors, audio engineers, musicians, like all the different pieces, and then depending on the project, we go, okay, I need person ABC on this one, I need person CDE on this one, and we kind of just structure our teams out that way to fill in the gaps. And so the easy thing to answer is that whatever I'm hiring for, they really should be skilled. Like they should be an expert to the best of their abilities in that particular thing, whether it's design or whatever it is. So that's the pretty simple one. However, the characteristics that will be kind of the more determining factors for me, like it's just like you need to be proficient in the thing that you're getting hired for, um but there are traits that I'm even willing to compromise on, that if I'm seeing things like curiosity, uh, ownership, self-direction. Like it's a lot of these things that I feel like are harder to teach or would take a significant amount of time to teach. And so it's like I just don't have the bandwidth to instill those qualities. It's things that we often learn. And it's for those of us that are like active listeners who are aware, who just care and are curious, who are ambitious in these kinds of ways, is one thing. And then those are some of like maybe those internal ones. But then there's also an element too, where I'm more or less thinking of it now that I'm talking out loud about it, is there needs to be an element of community as well. Like you need to be just, I don't know, a nice person. Like there needs to, like, you need to be enjoyable, at least somewhat. Like we don't have to, everybody on our team isn't like buddy friends, but for those of us that are sort of more in the trenches and on our leadership team and that kind of part of it, like we get along very well. Like we care about almost what we were saying a minute ago. Like we care about each other. Like we have professional relationships, but we care about each other personally. We're easy to get along with. Like we'll send each other stupid gifs or like whatever we're doing because we all work remote. Like I have one of my people I'll throw under the bus right now. He's really notorious about not invoicing me on time, and so I just sent him a gif of like this weird cartoon character just sitting on the bed. And it's like waiting, and I didn't give it any context, and I'm waiting for him to go, what is that for? And then I'm going to say, me waiting for your invoice. But it's like stuff like that. Like I'm looking for those kinds of traits in the people that I want part of my team.
It's an interesting question, and I think it's multifaceted. For me to narrow it down to one particular thing would be difficult because everybody receives differently. For me, I enjoy enthusiasm. It's nothing worse than a teacher, instructor coming into the classroom and just, oh, guys, we've got 8 hours of this today. Let's just get through it and, just tick the box. And then and that to me, I like to see enthusiasm. I like to see an interest and a passion for what they do, because if they're passionate, it means the subject means something to them. And that intrigues me. So I want to know as well. And it can be anything, in school, I really, like I said, this Mr. Bidgood, he was incredible because he made history come alive. When you speak to a lot of people say, oh, history, no, come on, it's like it's gone. But the future is built on the past. And if you understand what's happened in the past, you'll understand where we're going as a future. But he made that kind of stuff come alive. So for me, that's probably one of my personal things that I enjoy. As a person is enthusiastic and they're passionate about what they do. Again, I want somebody that's going to work with me, not against me. We have a very structured environment that I fly in and I work in. I'm in an airline, so I'm a Boeing 777 captain, as mentioned earlier. And so we have the structure of the crew is like this. There's a captain, there's a first officer. So there's 2 pilots, and then there's a purser who is in charge of the cabin. So that you get the flight deck and you get the cabin behind. And then the purser has the cabin crew who they direct and work with. If there are any issues, if the purser can't sort it out, it comes to me, and then as a captain, and then I will sort it out and take it further if needs be. So there are teams within teams, the way I see it. So the captain is in charge of the flight and the overall safety of the flight. And the purser would be in charge of the cabin, which would include passengers, etc. And what we call customers nowadays. It's not passengers, because these are people that are paying my salary, and I'm really happy to have you on board. So the team structure, because the airline environment is very structured, so we work on standard operating procedures, the team formation forms very differently. Now, at present, we are doing, I do crew resource management as training as well, where we train pilots on using your resources, and your resources generally are your crew, the greater part. You have the company that can help you, the engineer that can help you, you can have your traffic controllers that can help you, and things like, and it's pooling your resources together, but also the human factor part of aviation, which is decision-making, situational awareness, leadership, communication. And you find that communication is one of the biggest issues. I work in a multicultural environment, and communication has different challenges. Something that you think is easily understood because we're both South African, can be misunderstood quite easily, and that is a bit of a challenge. So if you have a look at that, there's a thing we started teaching recently. It's by Tuckman, you may know him, and it's talking about teams, how they form. So it's a forming, norming, storming, and performing. So for us, teams come together, and we don't have to be mates. So you may be surprised to know that very often, in fact, most 99% of the time, I don't fly with the same person again. And I've been flying for 15 years at the company I'm with in the Middle East. And but yet when we meet somebody, to an outsider, they'd think we've been flying together for the longest time? It's because of standard operating procedures. So we don't have to be friends, don't have to be mates in order to make it safe. And you might say to me, yeah, but that's an aircraft, and how often do things go wrong? No, they don't go wrong very often, thankfully. But we also, it's the same concept going into a simulator training session where you are being assessed, and it is a pass or fail. There too, you meet the person that you're working with as you get into the briefing room. An hour later, you're sitting in the simulator and you're handling emergencies. So does it work? Yes, it does. But the thing is, the reason it works is we have very strict operating procedures. And not everybody works in a regulated environment like I do. But it's regulated for a particular reason, because over the course of time, we've had accidents where people did not work together, that did not follow operating procedures, and it confuses each other, especially a junior person being a first officer speaking up against a senior person being a captain and telling him, mate, you got it wrong. And to resolve that conflict never used to happen because there were relational issues in it. And then operating procedures came through, and this crew resource management, human factors training has had a huge impact on that. And one of the landmark cases that we study is an accident that occurred in the mid to early 70s, actually. It was in Tenerife between Pan Am, American Airlines, and KLM, the Dutch Airlines. And they had an accident in fog where two 747s hit each other, and the region of 500 odd people lost their lives. And the reason was, it was so simple. Had somebody in the flight deck of KLM just spoken up and voiced their opinion, that accident would never have occurred. So we took this as a huge thing to look at. So it comes to the forming part. So when you're looking at forming teams, I see it when I teach classrooms. The guys come in the morning, nobody knows anybody. It's a big airline, and the guys are very stiff. They sit around, and in the beginning of a group, everyone's polite. Everyone, oh no, after you. When you go through a door, everyone's like very polite to answer the questions, but it's very short answers, and very minimal feedback. The decisions are mostly taken. Nobody's really appeared to be any kind of leader because it's not required at that point in time. And that's the beginning part of the whole thing. But that's taken away because as the group carries on, it morphs into more of a norming and storming. So what they mean by that is the group becomes and forms their own norms, and any conflict gets resolved. So that's where relationship begins to build within the group. Now, we generally don't need that. The forming part is happened by our operation procedures. So we will arrive together, meet each other an hour or so before the flight, before we actually take off and go somewhere around the world. And our procedures have taken care of the nitty-gritty and the first part of the forming of a group. First of all, there's a leader. The leader is the captain. So we already know that. There's a designated leader. And the leadership style changes. So when you look at the forming group, you need, for a brand new group, as it forms, you need direct leadership. You need somebody to give some kind of direction. Otherwise, it's just going to flounder. You don't want a micromanager, but you need someone to give direction. It's really, really important. Otherwise, the group won't move ahead. That's already done for us because there is a captain. He's earned his rank because he's passed the courses. The first officer has earned his position, so you know he can trust your colleague. So there's already a trust basis, just purely based on the company's training standards. And then it goes into the norming and the storming part, and very seldom we get to that. But what you want to do is get to the performing, where we perform seamlessly, where the first officer can speak to a grumpy captain and not feel like he's putting his life on the line, not feel like he's going to get fired if he says something, because that's not what we want. We want them to speak up. And so much so that the company has mandated a intervention model where it empowers the first officer, a junior person, and it might be a very junior person, to speak up to a very senior, experienced captain and say, listen, mate, this does not look good to me. And to take notice of that and solve it before it becomes an issue and a safety-related issue. You don't want that. So we are very focused on safety. So the main goal of us when we get together is we want to do this job safely. And after that, we'll look at the efficiency. And then we'll look at comfort for everybody, the passenger comfort and so on. But mainly, if it's safe, we basically won the game already. And then, like I said, the efficiency afterwards. And this is just a very basic structure of what we form.
So, I mean, upfront, obviously the skills. Do you have the skills necessary for the position that we are looking for at the moment? And then once we've established and we've ticked off the box that you have the skills, do you have the right cultural fit within our organization? Things like what is important for a credit bureau. It's things like accuracy to detail. So we're looking at accuracy to detail. We're looking at team involvement. We're looking at things like timeliness. When I say team involvement, that no job stands outside of my position. If the business needs this to happen today, how do we communicate and how do we create the structure in order that everyone can get involved and we can all meet the objective that needs to happen? And I'm going to give you an example of that. Our most recent hire was for our YouTube channel. So we decided that one of the things that we needed to do was education for us is really important, Francois. It's always in TP and it's always been important. How do we empower our clients, whoever they are, landlords, estate agents, or schools or teacher? How do we empower them with the knowledge that they need to use our systems and services within their environment? So we've always done training, and we've always done training at a venue, and we've had people come to the venue, and that's the way, you used to do it. Now with COVID, we had to reinvent, and we had to say, well, how do we do these training sessions? And like you're doing at the moment, how do we make them digital? And so we wanted somebody who could help us on that journey. And so what we did was we said to the people that we found, here's one of our videos. Now, how do we take this and how do we create it into the TPN culture? And I'm not going to define that culture for you. I'm going to let you go away and have a look at what you're seeing and how do you present that back to us. That's a hard task to do, right? As a creator, that's saying, well, how do I take my creativity and how do I now use it in a different environment and present it back to the company who's potentially looking at hiring me for this position? What we got back was some people were focusing on time. So how quickly can I do it? Versus, you know what, this is going to take me a bit longer, but what I want to do is I want to show you my magic. And so the process was fascinating because we allowed people to develop, and we didn't say to people, well, this, or the applicants, this is your, you get one shot at this, but how do we develop that with you, and what do we see? So that's the first story, and who we have now is just the most amazing YouTube director, producer, videographer that can come in and take her, and I think that's important because it's not just about saying we want this and this is what we're hiring for. We want someone who can bring something to the job as well, something that we're not seeing, bring something into the organization, and that's how you grow and develop the organization as well. Teaching is magic. It's the most empowering job, I believe, that you can have, is to go out and share in storytelling, share your experiences and share your learnings, but also to absorb, because it's a two-way street. You've got to be able to hear and listen to what you're receiving back and adjust on the fly as you need to.
So I've been hiring people now for 6.5 years. I think I was 26 when I hired my first person. I was still like with my own business, and here I was trying to teach people. But I've learned over the years that I don't hire solely based on skill. At my agency, at Have You Heard, we're about 50 people now. And when you look at the CVs of these people, none of us necessarily have technical capability, but a lot of us have resilience. We have empathy. We have very much a can-do outlook. And most importantly, because what we deliver is based on culture and trends and research and insights, we have this insatiable appetite for more information, more learning. That's why I say when you're out of school, you just never stop learning. And it's also a consequence of the world we live in today. Things are changing at a more rapid rate than ever. So if you're not trying to keep ahead of it, you'll fall very far behind. So we really try and look for people who have that appetite for learning and finding out more. And curiosity is a very, very big thing that I look for in people too. It's difficult to pick up on kind of initial interviews, but the curiosity, I think, is something that needs to be groomed a lot more, and something that people need to practice in order to succeed.
So I thought one of the best ways to answer that is we have a post right now for a position, and I wanted to just read to you a part of like what we look for, and it really has to do with curiosity. I mean, I talk about this all the time, which is there's technical skills. So the team that I had that I'm talking about that my friend Carl was on were project managers, legal project managers that worked with the lawyers and clients to plan how to do the work and then execute the work. And we would look for, like, we're certification in project management and such, but what that was easy to find in some ways. What was harder to find were the people with the soft skills, like I said, be able to command, to facilitate, to lead, engage. And we drive change within our industry. We're trying to shift the way that lawyers think and other professionals. And so part of what we always look for is we love passionately curious people who think of themselves as lifelong learners and are curious about many things. You are humble, engaging, intelligent, and our next best friend. You have strong opinions with open mind. You are proactive and entrepreneurial, and you know how to take boldly and give graciously. Critical thinking is your sharpest tool, and you're able to think through the toughest problems. So that's right from one of our posts, and as you can see, we're not talking about a lot of technical capabilities, which is important too, but it's this insatiable curiosity is one of the things that has been most important to us, which leads to critical thinking. Mm-hmm. And as we in the field I'm in, solving problems, helping to drive change, we have a saying, don't fall in love with the problem, don't fall in love with the solution, fall in love with the problem. And that requires curiosity and not just moving fast and acting as a conveyor belt to move things along. You have to actually lean in and really appreciate that problem and explore it and investigate it. So that's also to the type of people we look for.
So I think, so just to, like, I used to do competitions when I was younger, and now I don't do competitions. So my job is to create content for my sponsors. So I chase these storms around the world and then I surf the waves they create. And one of the most important parts of that job is capturing the moment. So I work with, the main people I work with are photographers and videographers. And when I'm working with these guys, I think obviously a high level of professionalism and skill, but I think one of the biggest things for me is humility, because if somebody, like, you got to be able to give and take when you're working with someone. Like, I'm the professional surfer, so I kind of know the ocean very well. They know the cameras and the positioning that they need to get. But for me, there's nothing worse than working with someone who's kind of like a know-it-all, who's too proud to work together and figure out like how to get that best moment, So when at the moment, I'm making a film, working with a guy in Australia, and he's super humble. And I feel like it's so amazing. We kind of empower each other to get that perfect shot that we're looking for. And I feel like, I feel like humility is a huge plus for me when working with somebody.
We'll chat soon enough. Thank you, Matt. Stay super.
Cheers.
Well, that's it for today's show. I hope that you found value and that your classroom or your boardroom is now a better place to work at. please go check out the website staysuper.co.za to find out how my keynotes, workshops, or mastermind can assist you in teaching like a superhero. Until I see you in person or chat with you online, stay super.